Welcome everyone to the Making Connections webinar series presented by Seniors Health Knowledge Network. This webinar is presented by the Fall Prevention Community of Practice. My name is Lindsay Toth and I am the Technology and Admin Manager at SHKN and the facilitator for this webinar. Marguerite Thomas also joins us on the line. She is the coordinator of the Fall Prevention Community of Practice and will be assisting with the webinar technology. Before we begin, I'm going to give you a quick rundown on the Level 3 web meeting system. This webinar technology consists of two parts. The audio is provided through a telephone conference line, and the visuals are provided through a web platform. The phone number for the conference line and the link for the web platform were sent to you by email after you registered for the webinar with Level 3. If you have questions about the technology at any time during this presentation, please type them into the chat box, located on the left-hand side of your screen. Alternatively, you can send me an email to ltoth@seniorshealthknowledgenetwork.com. I will work with you to resolve technical issues as soon as possible. This webinar will contain opportunities for participation. There will be online polls, which you answer right on your screen, and a question and answer period at the end. If you have topic-related questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box. During the Q&A, I will read those questions aloud to the presenter. If you would prefer to ask your question over the phone, you may unmute your line by dialing *7 when prompted. When you're finished, please dial *6 to remute your line. This webinar is being recorded. The recording and the slide deck will be distributed by email after the webinar. I would now like to introduce our speaker for today, Elise Kayfetz. Elise is the Manager of Community Programs at CARP and also sits on the core team of the Fall Prevention Community of Practice. Welcome, Elise. You may dial *7 to unmute your phone line.
Thank you, Lindsay. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be speaking with all of you today about engaging Canadians as we age, 45 and up, and I really appreciate Fall Prevention Community Practice team for bringing me on to talk about this. So, as Lindsay said, my name is Elise Kayfetz, and I'm the Manager of Community Development and Programs at CARP. And this presentation was really born out of our experience working with and trying to engage with 300,000 Canadians across the country. So what we primarily do is we reach out to our members to encourage them to come to events, get politically engaged, and give them valuable member experience. So, to begin our conversation today, I thought it would be beneficial if we could all get a sense of who's on the phone. So if you could take the, 30 seconds to just fill out this poll, and this will give us all a good sense of who we're talking to. The results just came in. I presume everyone can see them on the screen. And just before we get into the results here, I just wanted to give all of you a little bit of a rundown of what it is that we're going to be talking about today. So of course, we've just done the poll, and then once this is complete, I want to just address some challenges, and this will certainly come up later in our question and answer period about how we can truly engage with older people. And then we'll move on to talk more about what engagement looks like in your community. And then we'll spend some time on engagement strategies. So looking at communication channels, talking with your members, learning what works with them, some friendly communication tips, as well as, what is it? You want them to come to an event, but what is it that you really want them to know and take with them? And we'll also touch on some ideas of enhancing your reach, as well as we'll go over some key takeaways. And I really hope that this gives us some good discussion. This will certainly help us as we grow with our communications, but I understand that many of you might be in the same boat as us. We're all learning how we can best communicate with this demographic. So based on the results I'm seeing here, 66%, 67% are managing isolated older adults. Very interesting. So this certainly will help us as we get into some of the challenges as we explore some ideas here today. Active, engaged older adults. So this is very helpful, and I think that we should just keep some of these ideas in mind here who we're speaking with. So this is great. Thank you for taking that poll, and we'll just continue to move on. One more poll. So if you can just take some more time here to let us all know which communication tools you currently use to engage your community. Seeing a lot of variations here. I'm very curious to know what some of the other items are, other ways that you use to communicate. Hopefully we can get to that later on in our discussion.
This is Lindsay. Feel free, if you did select other, just type it into the chat box now so we can see what we're working with.
Thank you.
Some of the things that are coming in are one-to-one interactions, face-to-face with a larger group, through the CCAC, email, direct mail, local newspapers. Thank you, everyone.
Great. I guess we're still waiting for some of those to come in. Okay. Oh, I think it skipped the results. That's okay. I'm just going to go back for 1 second here. The results. See that? Okay. So a large majority are using Skype. That's very interesting. At this stage, we don't use Skype here. That's a learning for us. And okay, so thanks everyone for sharing some of the other pieces. So before we get into the nitty-gritty here, I think it's important to understand and address some of the challenges that we have engaging an aging population, and this really comes from our own experience. Firstly, dealing with limited channels to connect. So what I mean by this is that members and clients don't always give their email addresses or phone numbers at events or at sign-up events or at seniors fairs, and this is due to a willingness to share their information. And there's certain, it's certain that there are amplified reservations sharing information around, especially now with email scams, fraud, etc. So we find that a lot of people are hesitant to share. So that's one aspect that makes it very hard for us to communicate. And in terms of accurate data, this is something that I've experienced firsthand at events, especially when you meet somebody, they're in a rush, they might not be able to fill out the form as completely as possible, which certainly creates problems when we're trying to connect with individuals. If there are other challenges, I ask that maybe you can put them in the chat room, but also that we sort of discuss more later on in the Q&A. But for CARP, these really are some of the challenges that we have right now. So how do we address the challenges, and how do we try to connect with our members as successfully as we can, we asked ourselves, what does engagement mean to your team? So for CARP, for example, engagement to us means that we are actively engaging our members across the country on issues related to advocacy, on offering them valuable membership opportunities through their benefits and also through the community. So for me specifically, I work with 60 CARP chapters across the country, working with volunteers on the ground and supporting their efforts to communicate with their members to get them to come out to events, send letters to politicians locally, and connect online with their members as well. So that's sort of what that's our big piece, and something that I suggest to many of you, I'm sure that you have in your own communities. You've been able to discuss an engagement strategy with your team. So really try to figure out what it is that you're looking for. So I noticed in the beginning a lot of you have face-to-face, one-on-ones, all very interesting. So in terms of thinking about what your engagement strategy looks like, it'd be good to sort of weigh out the pros and cons of engaging with individuals. What's the best way to communicate with them? Are you communicating online? Where do you want online traffic to flow if that's where you are communicating? Are you hoping that people will visit your website more regularly? Are you communicating offline? So are you using mail-outs? Are you sending letters? Is someone in your team in charge of your communications? And do you have a retention strategy? The retention strategy is probably the most important piece. So obviously we work hard to get them engaged, but then what's the plan to keep them? So if I can just keep along. So I offer this, the engagement strategy guide here, just a couple questions. This will also give us a good sense of what the rest of the presentation will look like. So specifically, how are you connecting with your members? For us, how are you connecting with your members? What do they want? What's in it for them? What are you asking of them? And they came, now what? So what I mean by this is, when we ask, are you connecting with your members and what do they want, something that we often do and something that I always tell my volunteers across the country is to just ask them. So I'm sure that many of you have done that, but really to ask your members what it is that they want out of their experience, and if you bring it to them, they'll come. That's just sort of the essential logic. So if you find out exactly what it is, what they're looking for, and you provide incentives, that will be very helpful. So ask them what they want. This will give them the feeling that they're feeling listened to, and you can do this online and at events via online surveys or evaluation forms. We use SurveyMonkey. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. If not, I'm happy to speak about that later on, and you're welcome to email me later. But that's a very successful channel for us. And really getting a sense of, does the event, does the program, does the place, does the time work with their schedule, and is it accessible? How will they get there? Thinking about these kind of factors and sort of nipping in the bud before they even ask these types of questions to make sure that they feel comfortable and that we're listening to their needs. So what's in it for them? Do you have incentives? For example, some chapters advertise that if you're a CARP member, you get to attend all meetings for free and potentially win a prize. If you bring a friend, you might get, you could put your name into a raffle to win another free membership for another friend. Or sometimes the chapters will go out into their community and get local benefits from places like a massage therapy studio and give that out as a perk as well. So the idea is, how do we maximize their experience and enhance the purpose of them being there to make sure that they come back? So it can be challenging for some to attend, and we want to make it worthwhile for them to come again. So moving along here. So CARP's communication channels. I just thought I would share this with all of you. CARP is lucky that we have the Zoomer media properties available to us. So that comes in radio and television and the Zoomer magazine. And of course that does certainly get a lot of views. About 6 million eyes go on to some of those a week. But specifically, when in the CARP office, our e-blasts and our e-newsletters are really what are our meat and potatoes. Our open rates is about 45%, which we believe is good for us. It's been consistent, and we know that our members look forward to getting those e-blasts. I often get emails sometimes saying, if they didn't get the e-blast, some members can obviously get very upset, so we make sure to take care of them. Obviously, our website, we've been going through a lot of transitions with our website, trying to update it, for making it more new and dynamic and accessible for our reach and for our members, as well as our mail-out. So previously, we would send out about 7 mail-outs in a year. Of course, CARP is a member-based organization, so in our mail-outs, we wanted to let our members know what we're up to, but also to encourage them to renew their membership. So obviously, mail-outs can be expensive, so we're working now to try and figure out ways to limit those, to reduce those costs and to reduce mail-outs as well. Social media is another big communication channel for us. Of course, as many of you know, our demo is the fastest growing of user groups, and I just recently read an article that we're actually losing the teen audiences, which is interesting, which sort of also messes up my plan to try and connect with the grandchildren online to try to get to their grandparents to get online. So I might have to figure out another strategy there. But in terms of social media, our CARP advocacy, CARP news, Twitter accounts, we're at about 4,000 followers, and Facebook, we're seeing about 14,000 on Facebook, and it's an amazing tool to be able to connect with those individuals. And I often run contests, working with our benefits team to offer deals and discounts and prizes to things like, if you're in Toronto, the Ripley's Aquarium, to the orchestra, to some movie documentaries that are being privately screened. So there's some great opportunity around there, which I'm always happy to discuss with you later on in this presentation or on the phone at another time, one-on-one. Of course, robocalling, I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with it. I personally love it because even though we know you get those calls later on in the evening, and they disturb your meal and they make your steak cold, robocalling really helps us because a lot of our members that do have a phone don't have a phone number, they give us their phone number, don't necessarily have an email address. So it's really our only portal to connecting with those individuals, and we always try to make them very friendly. So instead of saying, "Hi, my name's Elise, calling from CARP," it's more, "Hi, I'm calling about our local CARP chapter, and we know that we've seen you in the past," and you have to make it very friendly in the beginning to engage them in the call and to get them interested in staying on the phone. So I do have some some scripts that I'd be happy to share that we use to try to make them as welcoming and as kind as possible, and a gentle voice is always good. Brochures for us, we created new and targeted brochures recently, and we just wanted to cut down on costs, and we made a whole revamp. We actually even just updated our logo to make it a little bit more professional for us. Before we had the fish, many of you may recognize here on the screen that we do not have that fish anymore. And that's really just trying to make our branding a little bit more professional and kind to the eye. More communication tips, advertorials, and co-promotion branding. This is huge for us. As you know, CARP does have benefit partners, and we often co-promote brands with them, and they'll obviously, they want us to tell our members about their benefits and programs, etc., and in exchange they tell everyone about CARP and get their members to join as well. Co-promotion and branding really helps. I saw some of you are dealing with health and wellness centers, so this is something that could be very helpful for you if you we'll talk more about this in partnerships and other ways to have more reach, but really building partnerships with different organizations really helps you with your branding and really helps you get your word out there. SurveyMonkey, as I mentioned, I wish that I can see all of you and you can raise your hand and show me who uses it, but it really is a useful tool for us, and that's what we use for our polls. I'm going to give you an example now of one of our email communications strategies. In our efforts to be as transparent as possible, we have created this new vehicle to show all CARP membership what we've done for them lately via newsletter. And of course, just as a side note, we're working on a plan to create these in our mail out as well to make them more engaging, just so you know that. So the big piece and the reason why we do this is that it humanizes CARP, and the objective is to provide value-added information, keep members updated about what we're doing, and give them, most importantly, an opportunity to speak with us, because we found that so often we're just speaking at them. And what's more valuable for us and to build value with our members is to have that two-way communication and hear what they have to say, which is something that we might forget sometimes. So this is an initiative that we're working on, and that you'll see in, let me point this out here. Lindsay taught me how to use this great tool. So this here is our message from our team. And then over here is the CARP Action Online newsletter. This provides our members with all of our advocacy updates. Here you can see CARP hosts a panel discussion on adult immunization. The CARP poll results is also discussed in the Action Online newsletter as well. So we take a lot of pride in that piece because we have a huge reach. There's about, I think, 15,000 or so receive that newsletter. And it goes out now twice a month. So that's something to look out for, and I'd be happy to sign you up for that. There's a lot of great information there. And just to go back to the update from CARP, I forgot to mention that we have a 39% open rate with that. So it's a completely new project, and obviously, as I said before, we get a 45% open rate for just general newsletters, so this is a good turnout for us. So we'll continue to measure the return on investment by watching retention rates. So this goes back to some of the points I was discussing in terms of engaging your membership and your clients and the people that you're working with. What are you asking your member client? So are we asking them to attend an event? Do we want them to participate in a conference via web or online? We've done that in the past with the web broadcasting and have some pretty useful tools over here, which I'm happy to talk about later. Do we want them to write a letter to the government? We just did a huge campaign to hold the government accountable, to hold their feet to the fire is what the campaign is called, to write to the government and to join the campaign to say, hey, this is what you promised. Are you going to follow through? So that was done through email. In terms of volunteering, that's another big piece for us. We often, we have about 6,000 volunteers across the country, and it's obviously a challenge to get them, and obviously more challenging for them to stay, which we know with volunteer burnout. But with outreach to volunteers, we have a online application process, and it's a very easy application process, and we get a lot of retirees coming on board, and even some younger individuals as well. So they're coming on through our online channel. I'd be happy to share that with you later on if you have any questions or if that's something that you're trying to ask your members or clients. More recently, we're going to be setting up a donation platform and asking members to help donate and join the fight. And then, of course, renew membership is a huge part of our ask to our members, and participate in surveys. And that's more or less the gamut of what CARP is personally asking our members. I'd be interested to know what some of you are asking your clients or members here as well. So this is important. This also goes back to the survey results. If you create something that they want, they will come. So I often get our chapters to ask their members what it is that is suitable for their members, specifically for events and programs. So we get a sense of, is it good, is it accessible for you to come during the weekday, or is it better on the weekend? Time of day is a really, really important factor. As many of you are likely aware, probably aware, driving at night could pose an issue. So we try to keep our events around 4 o'clock during the winter time, and then a little bit later in the summer. Location is obviously a really important item. Is it an accessible location? And when I say accessible, yes, is it wheelchair accessible, but is it friendly? Is the lighting good? Are there carpets? Are the bathrooms accessible? Are there wheelchair accessible bathrooms as well, which I don't need to preach to the choir. I know all of you are on board with that. Transportation is a huge piece. Are they driving? How do they get there? Transportation. Right. Okay. So the next piece is incentives again, which has been coming up now for the third time. What is it that you're offering them, and what's in it for them? And cost. So for us, we try to make our events free. Some chapters will have a charge for, sometimes it ranges from $5 to $75, depending on what the event is. For the for the more expensive events, it usually deals with a dinner or some other expenses that are incurred on the chapter. And in terms of just sort of how to really engage and get people to come out, a strategy that I like to use is at least give them at least 1 month notice in advance of the event, and then a 2-week reminder, and then a day before reminder. I find that certainly helps. So in terms of getting them out, we send out a newsletter. We put a post up on social media, a post on the website, and we send out a robocall. And if we do all of that, we'll usually get a turnout between 50 to 100 individuals coming to events. Other good incentives I just wanted to point out, I'm sure many of you do already, they're raffle refreshments, just to sort of entice them to come. Everyone usually bites for the food. And just trying to think of any other pieces that I might be missing that we can touch on later on in the presentation. So in terms of communicating online, in terms of communicating via mail, even in brochures, any print materials, anything that people are going to see, I put together just some very simple do's versus don'ts. So on the do's list, use contrasting colors to make it easier to read for our demographic, especially those with cataracts or other eye issues, vision issues. Be specific and include all the details. I can't tell you how many times I made that mistake in the beginning of not giving enough details and frustrating individuals without giving them all the details that they wanted. So everything from who's speaking to where to park in some directions, just to nip it in the bud. In terms of bills, that's pretty clear. And another piece that I actually looks like I didn't put on here, but it's in my notes, is find out when your clients and your members are most active online, especially for those if you're trying to engage individuals online. And you can do a quick test by sending an email at varying times during the day, not back to back, of course, maybe 1 month send it in the morning, 1 month in the middle of the day, 1 month in the afternoon, just to see how quick they're responsive, and maybe that's when you want to actually focus your engagement efforts on. So that's just another quick tip. So the don'ts. Avoid caps in all of your messaging. Avoid using symbols, very distracting. Avoid bright colors as well. And avoid calling, communicating during dinner. As I said in the beginning, we don't want to disturb people when they're at home with their families. It's better to connect with them during the day. So here's the piece where the question of retention comes into play. That's sort of what comes into my mind here. So they came, now what? So of course, create a welcoming environment. Remind people, and I always do this, and I think Marguerite, I got this from you, at the very beginning, ensure people know where the bathroom is, and if they have any questions at that point, just let it all out in the beginning, and discuss that in the room with everybody. In terms of an agenda, obviously make sure that you let everyone know what to expect, so that they're all on the same page and don't get frustrated if they don't know what's going on. Communicate clearly as well. And try to make it, in terms of communication, if there's the opportunity to have PA systems and a mic, it's great to have a mic, especially when you're dealing with question and answer periods on the ground, because then people will be able to hear each other, of course. And if you make it as interactive as possible, it's the same thing as, you want to know what they want. You want them to feel like they're being listened to. So to connect them and make it as interactive as possible, depending on the type of event that you have, if it's with a politician, if it's with a health and wellness instructor, if it's even a yoga event or something like that, to make it as interactive and give everyone the opportunity if they want to speak. For me, number 4 is the biggest piece. This to me is what we do. It's just building relationships and giving people the opportunity to do that. And in my humble and my honest opinion, building relationships and maintaining those relationships is what people come back to the most. So whether it's one-on-one or you're in an event setting or whatever else it is, building relationships is what people come back for. Of course, with communication, I just mentioned, I think I skipped that one, just to make sure that you're clear, people can hear you. And the biggest thing also is trust. It's difficult for people in some cases to come out, especially those living isolated, and it's really hard. It was hard for you to find them. It was hard for you to get them out. So you want to make sure that it's worth their while and they come back again, especially for those living alone. It's really important that we build a safe and trusting environment and give them the opportunity to build relationships and for it to be as positive as possible. So enhancing your reach. I touched on this a little bit in the beginning of our presentation. Number 1, build partnerships. This is something that CARP is constantly doing, whether it's with the Arthritis Society, the Alzheimer's Society, with different businesses, local businesses. You build the partnerships so that it will help enhance your reach, get more individuals to come out. An example I always use, I'm not sure if some of you saw in my bio, I did some work putting together a prom for Holocaust survivors, and it was very difficult to reach out to them. So, of course, I partnered with probably 5 different organizations to find those individuals to come out to the event, and ended up getting close to 1,000 Holocaust survivors coming to these events later on. So that's something to keep in mind. Future co-programming is another great opportunity, something that CARP is trying to really focus on now. We did an event we did a job fair event maybe a year ago, and worked with many different offices, businesses to try and get people jobs. So being able to work with those organizations really helps enhance our reach as well. and offer something new. Don't be afraid to think outside of the box. I think that's something I've learned being at CARP. The more new it is and the more maybe risky potentially. For us, for example, we started doing a conversation, a death conversation. So it's a death cafe, and it's called Dying to Have the Conversation. And they've done, it's out west in White Rock, Surrey, and I'd be happy to connect any of you with the chapter chair out there. They've done a 3-part series on Dying to Have a Conversation, and their attendance has been between 50 to 100 individuals, and it's been extremely successful. And in terms of enhancing your reach, piggyback. So I say this as to just, someone else is doing something, jump on board, help them however you can, so that they sort of repay that back to you as you build those partnerships and relationships. So those are some key factors for us to help us enhance our reach. So in terms of member acquisition and building relationships with individuals, we've just formulated a formal relationship with the Arthritis Society, so working with them. And on my end, right now we're just in the beginning stages of working with them to bring events and programs to our chapters across the country. And we've had past work with Diabetes Association and looking to do more work with the Alzheimer's Society as well. So in terms of key takeaways, there's a lot. There's a lot to take in with this online, offline, and I'm sure we could probably talk about this for a few more hours. But I just wanted to go over some of the key takeaways from today. So some of the challenges we talked about are really just making sure we have the right information to connect with people. So when you're out at an event, and you put the effort and time into doing what you're doing, also put just as amount of the same effort that you would into that as you would getting people's information down. That's a really important piece. The engagement strategy is obviously huge. So if you need any tips or anything, I'd be more than happy to speak with you about what it is you want to do. Even if it's a social media strategy, I saw a lot of you are active on Twitter and Facebook and Skype. Just really hammering out what those details look like and making sure you follow those strategies and sort of celebrate the successes always. We went over a lot of different communication styles, which I'd be happy to speak with you individually about again. So newsletters and social media and mail-outs, expenses, etc. Of course, partnerships we just went over really help enhance your reach, connect you with other organizations, just like the Fall Prevention group here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be giving this presentation. And of course, the big piece, these last two here, listen and the two-way communication. Again, it's all about building relationships, staying transparent, and letting people know that you're there to build a relationship. And we often hear in our field there's so much loneliness, and if there's anything we can do to just sort of try and allay any of that for just a little bit of time, we're doing our job right. And of course the tips, I hope that some of you will be able to take that away with you. And otherwise, 40 minutes, Lindsay, we're just ready for questions now. So I know it's a lot, and I'm happy to take up.
Thank you so much, Elise. That was great. So now I'd just like to invite everyone, you can type questions into the chat box, and we'll also give an opportunity for the phone lines to be unmuted so that you can ask your question over the phone if you prefer. We'd love to hear some of your own experiences trying to engage with older adults, and whether they were successful or not, there's probably something that we can learn, and we can talk about what would be even better for next time. So I'm going to start with just a comment that came in through the chat box when you were talking about, Elise, about how you were trying to use social media to engage with the grandchildren to get their grandparents on social media. Someone suggested, it was Gail. Gail suggested Instagram for the grandchildren.
Yep. Definitely, that was the first mode of social media, the platform that I was thinking about as well. So we're certainly on the same page, and there's so much you can do. But really, we need to get the grandchildren involved and on board, because these days it really is an active tool. I know I have a cousin of mine, just for example, she's in her teens, and just based on the amount of likes she gets for the image that she posts compared to mine is like triple-fold. I'll get maybe 60 is the most I've ever had, and my cousin is getting about 130. So she has a huge reach, and I can't imagine how many more grandchildren she has contact to. So definitely social media and Instagram. Gail, you're right on point, and I'd be interested in maybe talking about some strategies there.
And then one more suggestion that just came in from Lisa, Snapchat is another one that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now some questions. A very general question of just about CARP. How much does it cost to become a CARP member?
So the cost for CARP for a CARP only 1 year is $24.95. So that includes it's a 1 year membership, and that gives you all of the benefits. And a lot of people save on travel and rental cars, health insurance, and it also includes 9 issues of the Zoomer magazine. We also have 2 and 3 year options as well. The 3-year option is $34.95, and the 5 year is $59.95.
Perfect. All right, a comment from Marguerite. Regarding the money charged, I found that means that charging a minimal amount for the food works better than free. Free can equal being of no value, while a bargain is a bargain.
Yeah, good question, and that comes up a lot, especially because, if people are paying for something in advance, you can be sure that they'll come. For us, I often find almost the opposite. If you charge them, you'll get a less amount of people and for a lower attendance rate. And for example, out in BC, one of our chapters just hosted an event that that partnered with CanAmed. So of course, this conversation of legalization of marijuana is coming up. They had some politicians come out and talk about it. They were originally charging $10 a head, and she emailed us and she said, "I'm not getting responses. I don't know what to do. Can you send out another newsletter?" And my colleague Anthony here and I, we said, it could be that the cost is sort of turning people away. And as soon as we made that change, and I think they took care of refunds for those who did pay, the numbers went up astronomically. And they'll be doing another part on that as well. But that's a great question, for sure, Marguerite.
I wonder if anyone else has had experience with that. I'm going to put the instructions to unmute your phone. So it's *7 to unmute and then *6 when you're finished to remute. But has anyone had some personal experience about charging for workshops or charging for food and events versus not charging or charging a very minimal amount, and what the impact has been? So feel free, anyone, just hop on the line now by dialing *7 if you have.
Hi, this is Lisa.
Hi.
Hi. So I will say that we recently, we're just about wrapping up a series. It was called A Taste of Jarlette, so that's our company name, where we did, we offered it, we did it at different dates at all 6 of our lodges, and just we had that discussion initially with all of the managers at the lodges. Do we charge a minimal amount, or if we're inviting people to come into our homes, do we just offer it for free? So we did go the free route and just, kept a budget in mind so that you're budgeting a certain amount of dollars per guest that will show up. And we did find it very successful. So we did across the board offer the free food, offered a signature beverage, but then, anything if somebody wanted to purchase from the bar, that kind of thing, there was a cost to that. But really great comments and really great feedback, and I think that with our target demographics, we likely wouldn't have had the turnout if we did charge with our clientele.
That's great. Thank you so much, Lisa. It's *6 to read your line. That's great information, though. I expect Kathy Murphy has her hand raised. Kathy, would you like to unmute your phone line and ask your question? *7 to unmute.
Hey, it's Lisa again.
Hi.
Hi. So just wondering how we can make these events more beneficial. So what happens is, at a fair or at a seniors, anything like that, where you have a lot of people, even at our own events, we ask that, for a raffle, they'll fill out a ballot. So just trying to qualify them. In the past, we have not included, age range and that kind of thing on the ballot. So when you get them, the information is very vague, and really they, if you start uploading them into your CRM, you've got a lot of people in there who maybe just came out for the event, or maybe they're a family member, that kind of thing. So how do you feel, and what kind of, what do your ballots look like in terms of qualifying questions or on them?
That's a good question. Really, for us, it's just for the raffles. We do ticketed, so we don't even take any information. We just get from the dollar store. You just go and you get the raffle tickets, as opposed to writing the number down, writing their information down. And when an individual knows they're going to be leaving in advance, they will write their phone number on the actual ticket. So that's really what we do. But I'm interested in what others might be doing as well.
Yeah, because we're kind of, we're hoping to maybe generate a bit of a lead source. Yes, building those relationships, but just to qualify the people that we should be contacting for the next event. And my information is that if you just, offer an age range that they can check off, are you, between the ages of, 25 and 45, 45 and 65, 65 and 85, that I'm just wondering if that would be off-putting for people, but it would be a great qualification tool for us when we're looking at that data.
For data, yeah.
Yeah.
There's mixed feelings around that, for sure. I'm definitely open to hearing what others have to say, but we originally didn't have age range on any of our documents. Up until 3 years ago, we started putting it on for Stats as well, and we took it from Stats Canada, exactly how they were doing it. So if anyone asked, we just sort of said, this is
that's helpful, actually. Do it according to Stats Canada and then lay down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Shift the responsibility to someone else now. Thanks, Stats Canada. Yeah.
Yeah, their fault. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thanks. I think that might be something interesting for us to continue exploring, because there has been a lot of conversation recently around, do we just engage the frail elderly or in fall prevention activities, or do we sort of drop the age range and start engaging people who are pre-frail but also even older adults? Should we be engaging people in their midlife around fall prevention activities? So maybe if people have any comments on that, and are you engaging younger, older adults in your fall prevention activities, or is it strictly sort of that 65-plus traditional age group that we should be targeting? So if anyone has any comments, *7 to unmute your line. All right, that's okay. We'll move on to some questions that are in the chat box. Well, a comment first from Jenny. We offer programs for free, but list a monetary value of what it's worth. So, for example, this is worth $65, but we're offering it for free thanks to X funder. So that's a good example, Jenny. Thank you for sharing that. That kind of incorporates what Marguerite was saying about how people like a bargain.
Yep.
From Sherry, I think your demographics will determine who is willing to pay versus not. Younger generations, in my experience, equate with having to pay for something with having higher value. Seniors seem to be opposed to paying for attendance. Thank you, Sherry. From Nimera, what is the age range of CARP membership? How many use technology over telephone or are accessible on social media? What age group uses what media?
It's an excellent question. So CARP membership, right now what I can tell you is our average age is 68. It used to be that you could only join CARP if you were 45 plus, and I kind of like to say this was my fault, but when I met Moses Neimer for the first time, I said I was 23, and I didn't find it fair that I couldn't join CARP as a gerontologist, so I hope that one day that will happen. So right now, it's the gamut, right? Like it's basically, I say 18 up, like a voter's age, to be a CARP member, and we actually do have one of our CARP, just in terms of ranges right now, is one of our CARP chapter chairs, a member of his board had a baby, and they actually gave the baby a membership just to make a point. This is the future of aging, and we need things to be okay for this little one. So the numbers, I can look into numbers if you want, Nimera, if you want some more details on that. In terms of technology other than telephone, I don't have the stats to speak to that right now. I'm happy to look into that if that's something you'd be interested in. Absolutely. So I hope that answers that for now.
Thank you. So there's been a few questions in the chat box about how to engage those harder to reach, more isolated populations, people who are living alone, low income, don't have access to cars or don't drive, people who don't speak English, etc. Do you have any suggestions on that?
Okay, so with this question here, I think this is pivotal in the success of every event, and I always go back to the senior prom I was talking about for Holocaust survivors. A lot of people marginalized, living alone, isolated, and the budget always includes transportation and working with local transportation companies. So here in Toronto, we were working with Dignity and Malmer services, and some taxis even sort of came on board. And at that time, even Uber was just starting out. They came and helped out as well. And Circle of Care was certainly a huge help with that too. And it's certainly something that if they can't get there, then there's, it's how are you going to do an event and how will you be successful? So I think it's a very important point, Janice, and if there's more that we can do to help people get out of their homes on a budget, I think we should certainly be directing our focus to that. So thanks for sharing that point.
I wonder, Elise, could you touch on a couple more marginalized groups, people with dementia and people who don't speak English or English is their second language? Do you have any suggestions for reaching those groups?
Yep. So in terms of, they'll start with language barriers. It's really important. Again, an example with the senior prom, there are a lot of Russian-speaking survivors. So I went to those organizations to help out and had a volunteer to actually speak anytime there was a call that came in, obviously that I couldn't understand. And I knew a little bit of Russian, so I could pass them on to that individual to connect them with someone who does speak the language. So that was very, very useful. So that's in terms of going back to our partnerships and building relationships with other organizations. It goes back to that. And most of the time, if you search, it's sort of just, those organizations and solutions are sort of standing right in front of you. In terms of individuals with dementia, at CARP, for me, and this stands out more, is if we get a call, and I forgot to mention this, and this is so important, and thank you for bringing this up. If we get a call from someone who might have some inkling of cognitive challenges, I'll always suggest, CARP is not a service agency, but what we can do is just offer whatever services that are available to individuals. So I've oftentimes spent time speaking with individuals on the phone, very confused, and always just I have to send them to either 211 or the Alzheimer's Society, and that's always worked out. And I never really I don't get repeat calls too often, but that would be our solution. And in terms of engaging people with dementia at events, especially for those in long-term care facilities, a couple of years back, I had the opportunity to work with individuals on prevention, dementia prevention, Alzheimer's prevention, and I ran a community group to help those individuals sort of stay stimulated, and did some of those rearranging words programs, like get a big word, then they would actually come up with words within a word, and that created a really great bonding experience for me and the individuals that I was working with and spending time with, as well for them, and that was a very meaningful experience. But in terms of CARP firsthand, anytime we get calls, we our red flags, we call them, we send them to other organizations to help support them. And I think it's a really good point, and I think that CARP should be, partnering with potentially many of you on this call to have programs and events for individuals with early onset dementia, people with dementia, to keep them engaged. And I think that certainly you bring a very good point, and it's a gap, and I think that we really need to do our best effort to fill it.
Thank you, and that's a perfect segue into our last question of the day. Can CARP come and do presentations at faith-based community seniors events? So, I think this person has something very specific in mind, but does CARP do presentations?
Let's talk. Absolutely, yeah. We'll definitely, we usually, in these cases, we'll come out and we'll talk about what CARP does, and something that we're really working on is, that's under my leadership right now, is advocacy and action. So taking our advocacy issues, working with like-minded organizations that have, similar interests, things around, for example, around support for caregivers, or even older workers. We really should have a conversation about the types of programs that we do and who we can speak to. So I'm always open to collaborating with other organizations.
Thank you so much. And just one final reminder, Elise's email address and contact information is up on the screen right now. So these slides will be circulated after, but you may just want to take a minute to copy that down right now if you want to connect with her in the next couple days. So thank you very much to our speaker today for providing this valuable information to help us advance our knowledge and practices in seniors' health. I'd also like to thank all of our participants for attending today and engaging in a really great discussion at the end. I'm going to ask that you please don't close this webinar window just yet. Wait until you've been redirected to the Level 3 lobby screen, and then once you see that screen, then it's safe to close the window and a very brief evaluation survey will launch in your web browser. We'd really appreciate if you could take a couple minutes to give us some feedback so that we can continue to provide high-quality webinars and improve in the future. A recording of this webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel as well as circulated to all the participants in the coming week or so. Please feel free to pass it along to any colleagues you think might be interested. For more information about the network or to join one or more of our communities of practice, please visit seniorshealthknowledgenetwork.com. And you can also learn more about the Fall Prevention Community of Practice by visiting our online communication platform called Loop. It's at fallsloop.com. Again, that's fallsloop.com. We will have a discussion started there to follow up from today's webinar. So if you have any questions that we didn't quite get to today, or you have some experiences that you want to share, or you want to pick your peers' brains, that would be a great place to do it. So fallsloop.com, we hope that everyone will create a profile and we can continue this engagement on Loop. Great. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.